Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to Ice Fishing virtual event that we're doing this year. My name is Jacqueline Burmeister, and I am the coordinator of the Lakes and Ponds program in Worcester. So this is an event that we put on last year for the first time in Worcester in collaboration with Mass Wildlife. Mass Wildlife has an excellent angler education program. Jim Legacy, who's going to be your host tonight, is the coordinator of that. It's been an excellent partnership over the past year. Specifically, last year we hosted an angler event series in Worcester to highlight the connections between fish populations and fish health and water quality, because a lot of what we do at the Lakes and Ponds program is really try to improve water quality in the 20 plus lakes and ponds that we have here in Worcester. And obviously fishing is one of the things that people like to do there. And really engaging with anglers is something we would like to do more, and empowering them to learn more about what's going on in their lakes and ponds. So we work very closely with the watershed associations around town, all these concerned residents who are really stepping up and volunteering to help improve these waterways. Tonight, this event, in addition to being hosted by Mass Wildlife, is hosted by the Tatanic Brook Watershed Association and the Indian Lake Watershed Association. Both of these associations represent water bodies that are excellent for ice fishing. Last year, we had an excellent ice fishing event on Indian Lake in Worcester, and an event that a lot of these photos on the screen here tonight are from on Cook's Pond in Worcester. So if you haven't fished in Worcester before, I definitely want to check it out. In addition, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for an in-person demonstration of the ice fishing after the program tonight. We'll be sending out those links, and that in-person demonstration will be taking place on a Worcester lake as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our host, Jim Legacy, the man, the myth, the legend. He is going to be taking it from here. Jim, you want to share your screen?
Sure, Jacqueline. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. All right. I'm assuming everyone can see that, Jacqueline. And we won't go to our first video, and if it doesn't, I'll go back, but I'm pretty sure I got it. I nailed it. So as Jacqueline's, my name is Jim Legacy. I coordinate the angler education program for Mass Wildlife. And this program is going to be ice fishing for beginners. I just like to say that we are happy to be working with the town of Worcester on this. It was a wonderful year last year. We did so many events, and it only made sense to keep doing these this year. If you miss this, we're going to send you out links probably tomorrow for some other follow-up stuff later tonight or tomorrow. But if you missed this or you can't watch it all, we have a similar version on our website on Mass Wildlife and other ice fishing tools and tips. So look no further than your state Fish and Wildlife agency. So what we're going to cover tonight is, why would you ice fish? Why would you want to go out on a frozen lake in the middle of the winter? Learning to be comfortable on the ice. That includes safety items and knowing how to test the ice. Dressing for warmth and comfort. We're not going to belabor that. Most people know how to dress nowadays. Ice fishing, we'll get right into it with the ice fishing regulations. There are specific regulations for ice fishing, essential ice fishing gear, tip up and jig stick techniques, which is how you fish through the ice, and then tips for success. So let's get into it. So why would we ice fish? Why would you want to go outside in the winter, right? Well, first and foremost, why would you do any pastime if it wasn't fun? Ice fishing is no different than any other kind of fishing. It's a lot of fun. And it depends on your tolerance for weather. I would recommend that if you don't like the middle of the dead of the winter, when it's down to zero or whatever, just pick a good day. A day like today. Today was 35 to 40, sunny, gorgeous day. This would be the day to go out and ice fish. I think if you come to the demo on Saturday, it's going to be even warmer. It's going to be in the 40s. And hopefully we'll have safe ice. It's supposed to be a nice day. So fun is why you do any pastime, I'm assuming. And ice fishing is no different, because you never know what you're going to catch. I mean, once you're into it, you kind of do. But it's not like fishing in open water times where you can see the fish, you can see their habitat. you can kind of more or less know what if you're targeting bass, you're looking for this habitat. If you're targeting trout, you're looking for deep water habitat. It's similar, but with ice fishing, most of the fish are going to be on the bottom because that's where the warmer water is in the winter. So, and they group up, so you never actually know what you're going to catch until that flag goes off, and you'll see that in a video coming up. And that's the thrill of it, especially for people that have never done it, and young people love when that flag pops up and love the thrill of not knowing until it comes through the ice what you're going to catch, because it's what's for dinner. That a lot of people are motivated to fish in general for food, and ice fishing is no different. Myself in particular, I like to fish for yellow perch in the winter. I think they're really delicious fish. The fillets are out of this world. They're really sweet, tender, easy to cook. So that's my motivation if I'm ice fishing. But there's also trout that are delicious. Some bass are good, calico bass, pumpkin seed bluegill. So it depends on your palate and what you enjoy eating. But I'm motivated by that. It's great exercise. You're not going to ice fish. It's not a lazy pastime. You're not gonna not exercise if you're out ice fishing. So you're out drilling holes in the ice, moving gear around, running around on the ice. You may be combining it with skating, which I absolutely love to do, throwing the football around, cooking, hanging out with your family and friends. You are getting that great vitamin D and giving your body a healthy stress. Stress is good for the body if it's healthy, and exercise is one really healthy stressor for your body. So ice fishing is a great way to do that. As you can see us dragging the equipment across the ice a couple of years ago on Lake Chauncey. It's great for families with children in particular. If you have children or grandchildren, I'd encourage you, and you have an interest in fishing, I'd encourage you to give this a shot. No better way to spend time with the family than out ice fishing. And my favorite is because it's a tailgate party on the ice. That we generally go out with a group and make a whole day of it. Bring our breakfast, bring our lunch, bring warm drinks, and just have a ball out there on the ice. So it's ice fishing. Of all the fishing pastimes, is more of the social aspect. People generally do it in groups and for social fun in the winter. So, but before you even get started, you need to learn to be comfortable when you're out there on the ice. And I can't state this enough. You do not want to go out on the ice unless you know it's safe and that you're confident in your ability to make sure that that ice is safe. This young lady is a coworker's daughter, and she's been ice fishing since she was a little over 1 year old, and absolutely loves it, and is very confident out on the ice. Don't be this dog. Don't be this dog slipping and sliding all over the ice. So start by being safe. We all hear this word now, right? It's almost overused in society. Safe, 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 safe. But when it comes to ice fishing, you really want to be safe. Every year you'll flip the news on, and early in the winter you'll hear about someone that went through, sadly, and sometimes it's the worst case scenario. So don't be that person. Just know how to test it. And we're going to show you this in a moment. But be safe. Wear a life jacket. If you're new to it, that gives you the ultimate confidence. Bring a length of rope if you're with a group that they can throw it to you if you go in, or you can throw it over to them and they can drag you out. Wear these safety spikes around your neck, and there's all different varieties. They're very cheap, and you should always have them. You'll see them in my video. I have them. Some that'll go down through the sleeves of your clothing, and others that just clip around your neck. Worst case scenario, you go in, you can take these and just pull yourself out. Use your upper body strength to pull yourself out together with your life jacket. That can be very important. Wear ice cleats if the ice is like it's going to be in the next week or so. We've had a fresh cleanse of the top of the ponds. The snow is gone. We've had a good melt, so it's awesome. Now we can go skating again, but you'll have a hard time walking unless you have cleats or you wear skates. Pack an extra set of dry clothes in case you fall in. Again, it gives you confidence that if you do, you can get comfortable quickly. How thick does the ice have to be? That is the million-dollar question, right? So this was put together by the state of Minnesota many years ago. It's a chart that shows engineered strength of ice, nature's engineered strength of ice, and the best ice is that clear blue or black ice. So no precipitation has been mixed in. It hasn't been exposed to freeze-thaw cycles. So you get just steady temperatures below freezing day and night, and you get this really strong black or blue ice. That's the best stuff. We rarely get that in southern New England. So 2 inches or less of that, stay off. It's not safe. 3 inches of one person on foot, 4 inches a group in single file. And you're kind of getting the picture here. As you get more thickness, you can put more and more weight on it. We don't do our programs unless they're 6 inches. We're introducing people to the pastime. We want to give them the confidence to feel safe out on the ice. And you're really not going to do that if you're just on 3 or 4 inches of ice. So we need 6 inches. And generally here in southern New England, like you're going to see in the video, you get that freeze thaw mixed in, precipitation mixed in. So it's more of a milky white ice. Still very strong, very safe if you get the requisite amount, but it's rare to get that really clear blue and black ice unless you get a complete melt and refreeze, or you get that early season ice. So let's talk about how to determine safe ice. It is definitely not going to be this easy. You're not going to pull up to a lake or pond and see a sign that says, stay off the ice, it's not safe, or welcome, the ice is now thick enough to be out on it. You have to figure this out for yourself. And this video should show you how to do that.
So Jim Legacy again, Mass Wildlife Angler Education Coordinator. And the first and most important thing about ice fishing is being safe on the ice and being confident in your ability to be safe on the ice. The first couple of things you should have with you, especially if you're new and you've never ice fished before, is a PFD. This will give you all the confidence you need. If you did happen to go in, worst case, you'd be floating, which would give you the ability to stay on that surface and dig in and get yourself out. The other thing you should always wear, whether you're a brand new ice angler or a veteran, are these ice spikes. They're basically just little sharp objects that you can hold in your hand. You always wear them around your neck. There's a variety of different kinds, but basically just if you did fall in again, you can just pick your way back out and use your upper body strength to pull yourself out of the water. Very, very important safety item to wear. If you're fishing with a buddy or a group, as often we do when we ice fish, you should bring a length of rope. If someone does go through in your party, you can throw this to them, and the other folks can drag you out. Again, worst case, what I'm going to show you next, you generally don't have to worry about any of this. You should still have it with you, but being able to test the ice for strength and safety is your number one thing to be able to do. So we're gonna take these off while I test the ice, and the way to test the ice is a very simple procedure. There is no website to consult or number to call to tell you if this pond is safe, if that lake is safe or not safe. You have to do this yourself. You have to be your own advocate for safety. So the first thing you do, you come down to the water's edge. On the very edge, we're at the boat ramp here on South Pond, Lake Quacumquasit, Central Massachusetts, early February here. A good indication that the ice is safe, you'd pan around and you see other people on the ice. You see other groups here, other groups over there. Then you can say, okay, it must be, it must be safe. However, I never trust anyone else. I want to find out myself. Some people will push it. Mass Wildlife recommends 4 inches, minimum 4 inches of black or blue ice for safe ice. What generally happens in southern New England is you get the freeze thaw mixed in, you get precipitation mixed in, so you get more of that white, milky colored ice like we have here today. We have snow on top. So that ice is not going to be as strong. So we like to see at least 5 or 6 inches. So we got to test that. We got to walk down. We're going to pretend there's no one out on the ice today, even though there's a few groups. We're going to walk down right to the water's edge. We're right at the shoreline, the boat launch here. We're just going to kind of move the snow aside here, and we're in maybe a foot deep of water, and I'm going to jump up and down. Literally just jump up and down and feel if anything gives or cracks under my feet. I don't feel anything giving or cracking. I'll go a little further out, still maybe in 12 to 18 inches of water. Jump up and down. It's a little slushy on the surface. Nothing's giving. So that's a good sign. If you were to feel cracking under your feet or the ice actually moving, you'd probably call it a day and say it's not safe. Never push it beyond that. But this ice feels really solid now. I'm going to move out a little further because I'm going to use a good old hand auger, a 6-inch hand auger. You can do it with a chisel or a small hand auger to see how thick the ice is. We're going to go a little further out. This might be 1.5 to 2 feet. So if you were to go through, it would not be the end of the day. It would be maybe up to the top of your boots. So plant your feet, just start drilling. Take your skimmer, kick the slush aside. Some people like to leave that, as it kind of insulates the hole on really cold days and keeps the ice from freezing. I like to just get it out of the way entirely. Take your skimmer, move all the slush out. Remember, we're right on the shore here. Good little common sense too is when you're drilling near the shore, don't drive this down into the bottom. Just as soon as you punch through, bring it right back up, because you don't want to mess up those blades. And if you have a chisel to check it, all the better, because that won't matter if you punch it to the bottom. Okay, now we're going to turn the skimmer upside down. We're just going to, I'll take my glove off here. We're just going to put the hook right on the bottom of the water, bottom of the ice here. Put it down till you literally hook the bottom of the ice. I'm going to put my hand right on the surface of the water column. Now you're going to measure from the hook to my finger. That's a good 8 or 9 inches. So 8 or 9 inches, even though it's not honeycombed ice, it's just that white ice with a lot of freeze and thaw and precipitation mixed in. It's plenty strong enough. So there is your indication that you're probably going to be okay. Now you want to stake out your location on the water. You look over, you'd probably already know roughly where you're going to set up. Say you want to set up in that cove or off that point. You'll still want to check it a couple more times on the way out. You will never assume that it's going to be the same thickness that it is on the shore. Ice freezes first on the shore and last out toward the middle, and vice versa. And it thaws out in late winter and early spring from the shore, and it's thicker out in the middle. Use those few little safety precautions. You'll have no problem out on the ice this winter.
So that's all there is to it, folks. It almost sounds too simple, right? You go out a few feet and jump up and down, but that's literally what you have to do, because you have to first feel if there's anything going to give. And if you only have 2 or 3 inches of ice, that ice is either going to crack and you're going to go through, or you're going to feel like you're floating, like that's moving. You want it to feel solid, like you're jumping up and down on pavement or on dry ground. So you do that right near the shore. You don't go far out, because some lakes do drop off pretty quick. So you just do it near the shore, and then test that ice for thickness. And a hand auger is an easy way to do it. So there's other factors too. And I would just like to say that make sure you get, the early season is when bad things usually happen, or after a long thaw and then a refreeze. Make sure you've got 7 to 10 days of freezing weather, mostly freezing day and night. Obviously, sometimes during the day, like today, it'll come up for a few hours above freezing. But as long as you're getting, 12, 14, 18 hours of below freezing weather, you're making ice. But give that a week to 10 days before you go running out. What usually happens late December, early January, people will, they haven't been exposed to the super cold yet. It'll get really cold. You'll get down to 0 at night. You'll get some teens during the day for 2 or 3 days, and ice will form quickly, and it'll look strong. And people, okay, they're fooled, and it's that early forming black or blue ice that looks really strong, like this ice, and that's when bad things happen. So you got to give it at least a week of really cold weather before you go out. So there's these scary sounds when you're on the water on almost any lake or pond. And it's settling. It's booming and popping. It's kind of really eerie on some lakes, and it's really cool sound. I love it. And if it's below freezing and you've got safe ice, the ice is expanding, and you get expansion joints like this, and that's what you're hearing, cracking and booming. But it sounds a little disconcerting, and if you're new and you haven't experienced it, it can be kind of scary. If it's warm, it can actually be contracting. But if you've got 8, 10 inches of ice, it's never going to contract enough. It just has an eerie sound of that popping and booming. But just test the ice like I just showed you, and test it a couple more times until you get where you're going, and you'll be fine. This is kind of what it looks like. This is that black or blue ice, and when it's expanding, you'll get these expansion cracks, and it looks like it's unsafe, but it's absolutely not. It's how ice forms. So a few other safety considerations. Again, we've already talked about. Stay away from that early forming ice. Stay off rivers and streams. I'm talking about the main channels in southern New England. There's rivers you can go on. The oxbow sections of certain rivers, like the Connecticut, the Merrimack, the Concord, the Charles, the Housatonic. These are geological sections of the river that have been cut off from the main channel over hundreds thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. So the main channel is it's made a big bend, and then with an event, it just cuts that big bend off. There'll still be a slight flow through it, but it's more like a pond in the river, and they call some of them ponds in the rivers. These are slow, lazy sections of rivers that do allow you to be safe after you get a good freeze up. But I'm talking about the main channels of rivers and streams, the fast moving water here in southern New England. Those are no-goes. Don't even attempt that. And what generally happens is a pet runs out on it, and then the owner feels compelled to go out on it, and then bad things happen. So up north in Canada, northern New England, you can be safe on some main channels of rivers, but not down here. We just don't have the prolonged winters for them. So watch out for honeycombed ice, and honeycombed ice usually forms after prolonged thaw or toward the end of the season. It'll look like just like the ice in that video, like white ice with snow on top. But what it basically is a giant slushy, or a snow cone. So you don't just run right out onto it. And the tips are gonna be it's gonna be really warm. It'll have been warm for a while, but that is the ice right before breakup. It's that honeycombed ice, and then the wind turns it all up and breaks it up within a day or two. So don't be fooled by that ice, even if it's a foot thick. It's going to be too weak to hold your load. But again, that's late season or after like a week or two of like 40s and 50-degree weather, which we can get here in southern New England. Again, make sure you test your ice more than once. Don't just test it at the shore and walk out. Again, ice forms first at the shore and then out into the middle, and then vice versa. Late in the winter, it's safer out and near the shore. It starts to ice out first. Beware of shore edges, especially on the northern end of ponds. The shore edges are not as safe or secure. I know it sounds weird. North is like, yeah, it's colder in the north, right? Well, that is exposed to that winter sun angle more. You can see it on this pond. This is Lake Chauncey a couple of years ago, and this is the north end of the pond with very little snow. So that sun is hitting this dark shoreline a lot more than it's hitting the southern end here in the eastern end over here. So those are the ends to walk out on, the safer ice, the thicker ice. The northern end gets a little too beat up because of that sun constantly beating on it. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for a place to jump on a pond. And of course, avoid docks and rock piles because, again, same thing. The sun is hitting those and weakening the ice around them. So
we had a question about the ice and just how many feet between each ice check.
Oh, that's a great question. So that is entirely up to you. If you're new to it and you need the confidence, I would check it every 20 or 30 feet. It's going to be more exercise. Obviously, you're drilling a lot more holes. But if you see, like in that video, there was groups out on the ice that day. So you pretty much know if there's large groups scattered around the pond, you're safe. But I would always do a check just so mentally you know. But if there's groups out on the ice and the check was really good at the shoreline, I would just check it a couple more times until you get to where you want to be. But if there's no one on the ice, and ice fishing is it occupies a very small niche within the fishing pastime. So sometimes it can be a beautiful weekend day and you could be the only one on the pond. So make sure you check it, every 100 feet or so, 50 to 100 feet until you get where you're going, especially if it's earlier in the season or later in the season, just for safety. That's a great question, though. So no bad clothing, no bad weather, only bad clothing. That's the old adage. And I subscribe to that to a certain extent. I still have my limits. And really the wind is the damaging element in the winter that can really take a day that could be a sunny day in the teens or 20s that otherwise would be comfortable. You add 20 or 30 mile an hour north or northwest winds, and it's going to be very uncomfortable unless you're dressed for it. So just a quick overview of how to dress for it. Just need a moisture wicking base layer and a layer that's going to block the wind. That can be a rain jacket. And then you load up between those layers you can load up with cotton or fleece, flannel, that's all fine. And then you can take them off as you get to find your comfort. But make sure that base layer is moisture wicking. Don't put cotton near your skin because you're going to be augering holes, walking a lot. You don't want to sweat moisture against your skin because it's going to make it for a very uncomfortable day. And then that rain jacket doesn't even have to be expensive. Just a wind block really, really helps on those windy days. Protect your extremities. Obviously, you're going to wear something on your head, something good on your feet and your hands. or the experience is not going to be what you desire. I love these balaclavas. They kind of come down and cover your entire face. People are starting to wear their COVID masks now through the winter, just as a comfort measure to warm their face. And I kind of get that. And these are the original face coverings for outdoors people. They cover your entire noggin and your entire face and just have your eyes exposed. So they're really comfortable on those cold days. Don't break the bank on any of this. These all can be had pretty inexpensively. Obviously, the more you get into it, the more you want to test your ability to be out in the cold. You want to get better stuff, but you can get a decent pair of winter boots without breaking the bank. And then traction is huge on those slippery days. You want something on your feet if you're not a skater, and then eye protection. Obviously, you're going to have that glare off the ice, especially if there's a snowpack. And people with light-colored eyes are really going to be bothered by that. So wear a cheap pair of sunglasses. The old polarized sunglasses. You don't have to break the bank here either. So those are just the basics. The more you get into it, and if you're an outdoors person, you know that anyways. So there's going to be some ice fishing regulations, folks. There's the same regulations as open water in terms of how many fish you catch, how many fish you can keep, or certain species have minimum sizes and how many you can keep per day. Those don't change throughout the year. But what does change is the equipment you use and how much of that equipment you're allowed to use. Again, another thing that doesn't change is licenses. You need a license in every state you fish. And in Massachusetts, 15 years of age and older, you need a license. If you're coming on Saturday, if you sign up and come on Saturday, you won't need one. Do not worry. We carry a permit that covers everyone at all of our events. But if you're on your own and you're 15 and up, you need to have a fishing license in Massachusetts. Some states it's 12, some states it's 14, some states it's 16. So know what state you're going in and know that rule. So in terms of the gear, we're going to get into in depth on the gear, but the gear you use for ice fishing, you're allowed 5 of those. Each one is designed to catch 1 fish at a time. Just like in open water times, when you're out with your rod and reel, you're allowed 2 per person, and each one is designed to catch 1 fish. So you can't cast your rod and reel out with 20 hooks on it, because that would be designed to catch 20 fish. So whatever's on the end, so one lure can be a lure with a bunch of treble hooks, can be a hook with bait on it. That's designed to catch 1 fish at a time. Same thing for ice fishing. You're allowed 5 tip-ups, and each of those tip-ups, and that's what the gear is called to catch fish through the ice, tip-ups and jig sticks. You're allowed 5 of those through the water, and each one is designed to catch 1 fish at a time. And I'll show you more about this in a little bit. Also, you need to be able to manage those tip-ups and jig sticks yourself. So if you're an adult with children or grandchildren, you want to bring them out, you're like, oh, good. So I have an extra person, I can put 10 out. That's fine. You can, as long as that person can manage those on their own. You can help them set them up, but if the flag goes off, that person has to be able to walk up and manage that on his own. You can't do that for them. So what I did when my children were younger, me and my wife would go out and we'd take our 2 young ones. I would just put like 5 out at first until everyone got up to speed and could manage them. Then we'd add a few more. We'd never fished with more than 10 or 12 because it is a lot of work. And what you do then, you do them as a group, and then you take turns with the flag. One time it would be my son, next time it would be my daughter. And that's kind of what we do at events. We set a whole bunch of them out, and as flags go up, whoever gets there first, whoever hasn't had a turn, can try and catch that fish through the ice. So just know that. And when you're out there, you have to actually be on the ice for the most part. If you have a cottage on a lake, that's fine. Just be mindful that you can't walk away and 3 hours later come back, because the fish could set your tip up and be struggling under the ice and have the hook in them for all that time. And that's not an ethical thing to do. So the law says that you have to watch your fishing gear. Doesn't specify if you're in a cottage or your vehicle from shore, but you have to be there and present to be able to watch if a tip up goes off so you can get to that. So let's get into the gear. This is the best part, the part that you tuned in for, the gear and how to use it, right? So getting through the ice is your most important aspect. And what I have lined up on your screen from left to right is the different gear types. And within the spectrum, there's a lot of different variety and nuance. But these are generally the 4 types that people use to get through the ice. Starting with my least favorite on the left, to my most favorite on the right. So on the left, you have a spud or an ice chisel, as it's referred to. And this is wonderful to check the ice thickness, and it's very inexpensive. You can pick these up from $20 to $30 at your local sporting goods store or grab it off Amazon. Not super expensive. So if the ice is lean, like 5 or 6 inches, you can just use this to ice fish with. However, this time of year and on, typically you're going to have 12, 14, 16 inches of ice in Central Mass. In the Berkshires, you can have up to 3 feet of ice. Going to be a heck of a chore to get through the ice with a chisel. And as I age, my wrists, my elbows, my shoulders really start to feel the pounding. So I'd rather not use that. I will use that to check the ice on the shoreline only. And we'll have one of these with us on Saturday so you can see just what I'm talking about. So then you get into the power of the game. And that is, I have this lined up more on the left side. It's not one of my more favorite ways to get through the ice. If I'm doing an event, I'm using this because you can cut 100 holes in about 15 or 20 minutes. And the holes are big. They're all 8 or 10 inch holes. And very efficient, very powerful way to get through the ice. The reason I'm not a huge fan personally of these is they're expensive. They're between $400 and $600. They're loud. It's a full-on 2-stroke motor. They're stinky. They're blowing fumes in your face. They weigh about 30 to 35 pounds, so they're heavy. But there's no more efficient way to get through the ice than a 2-stroke power head on an auger. You're gonna rip through very quickly. So it's great if you have big groups and you're going to cut a lot of holes, or if you're running events like we do. Otherwise, I'm leaning more towards the ones on the right here. I love this one right here. And we boomeranged this a few years ago, throw it up on our website. So this wouldn't be the correct way. You'd want to go clockwise only when you're turning, not back and forth. But these are hand augers, $50, $60, not a huge investment. Very efficient if the blades are kept sharp, and that is the biggest caveat. The blades need to be sharp. If they're dull, you're not cutting anywhere. You're just turning it on top of the ice, and very frustrating. If the blades are sharp and you have average upper body strength, you can rip right through a foot of ice in 30 or 40 turns. A workout, yes, it's definitely a workout, but it's a lot better than buying a $500 auger if you're only going to cut about 10 holes with you and a friend. So very efficient way to do it. My most favorite is the compromise here. It's an electric power auger. This it's a cordless drill sitting on a conversion plate with your favorite hand auger. All hand augers come apart. All the modern ones do. It's just a set screw, a big wing nut here, and you can attach this to the plate, your cordless drill to the top of the plate, and you have an electric power auger. All in $200 to $250 at the most. The most expensive part is a decent 18-volt or better cordless drill and at least a 4 amp hour battery. This is going to allow you to cut 100, 150 holes on any cold winter day. And it's very comfortable. It weighs about 12 pounds. It's very quiet. It doesn't exhaust a bunch of fumes in your face when you're cutting, and you're not going to wake up the neighbors on an early weekend morning with it. So very efficient. Great compromise, and you got a cordless drill to use the rest of the year for projects around the house, so you can multitask with it. That is my favorite. These are my 2 favorites, but I have all of these if it's necessary to go to them. So gear for catching, you got jig sticks and tip ups. Jig sticks are just mini rods. You do not have to go buy a mini rod. You can use your regular freshwater fishing rod, especially if it's only a 5 or 5.5 foot. You just stand back further away from the hole, or you take it in half and use just the lower half to fish. So you don't have to invest in these little fishing poles. It just makes the experience that much better because they're more sensitive. You can sense the bite a little bit better. And we'll talk about this a little more after. And they're just more condensed, and you can stand right over the hole and fish, and you don't have to stand 5 foot back. And the most common way to ice fish is with tip ups. They're also called traps. So they're ways to get your bait in the water. You can walk away, you set the flag, and they let you know if a fish has interest in your bait. So those are the common ways. Those are what you need other than your auger or your chisel. Other necessary gear, if you're going out with a bunch of stuff, you'll need a sled, something to pull it with, a pack basket, or some other means to carry your gear, your bait bucket. Of course, your auger's laying right in there. Bait buckets come in a variety of shapes and sizes. You'll need some way to get the slush out of the way. If you forget this, you can use your hand. I've been there and done that. get all the way out there, drive 50 miles away, and realize you forgot your ice scoop, so you're just using your hands. Great on a cold winter day. But the ice scoop is so much better because you can also check the ice thickness too. If you don't have an ice scoop for thickness, a little hack is you take a tree branch that has a little chute going 90 degrees off of it, so it's a main beam with a little chute going 90, and you put that right down to the bottom, just like I showed you in the video. You put this on the bottom of the ice, you put that little branch, and then you test it that way too. So you don't need your scoop to test it. You need some way to be able to test the thickness. So, and a branch will do you. And then sounding weights. Sounding just means finding the depth of something. It means your depth. So you got to be able to find the depth of the holes you're fishing in. That's kind of critical because most of the fish, especially early in midwinter, in all ponds are going to be more stacked up on the bottom. The warmer water's on the bottom. So you want to be able to fish just above the bottom. I know it sounds weird, right? Why would they be on the bottom? Why is the warmer water on the bottom? Well, I'll explain it in a moment.
Jim, I have a couple questions here. Yeah, so one I think has to do with the augers. So what if the fish is giant and the hole is too small? What do you do?
I've had that happen. But it's humble pie, right? You can't get it through the ice. You can try. You can let that fish swim. Take a nut, take your auger, and drill a couple more holes right next to it, which I've done. And then that hole becomes bigger. If it's not real thick ice, drill a couple holes near, like in a triangle, and then take your chisel and punch out that center. But you got to let the fish swim away again because you don't want to cut the line when you're augering. That is very rare. My favorite little auger is just a 5-inch auger, and I pulled 3-pound bass through those holes. Wow. Fish, you're going to occasionally get a big northern pike or a big trout or a huge 4 or 5-pound bass that, anything can happen. A 6-inch hole will be adequate for most all those fish. You get into the 8 and 10-inch holes or specialty auger bottoms for like northern pike and really huge fish, but 5-6 inches is usually enough. Great question.
There's one more that goes back to the fishing regulations. Yep. And what months ice fishing season are. Is that more weather dependent or is that regulatory? There's some kind of regulation.
In Massachusetts, it's weather dependent. So when you get safe ice, you can ice fish on most great ponds. In some states, there are days, there are start dates and end dates, and regardless of the weather. So check the regulations. In Maine is famous for that. They regulate by water body and by watersheds and regions. So just beware of when you're in other states. But Massachusetts, weather dependent. You get safe ice, you're good to go.
Great.
All right. So comfort items. So if it's a cold day, you want those hand tone body warmers. Love these. These are awesome. These extend your ability to be comfortable on the ice. Obviously, hot drinks and food items are just wonderful out there. We talked about a tailgate party on the ice, and these go hand in hand with that. And then a warming fire. Don't let anyone tell you can't have a fire on the ice. There are certain towns, I'd have to say, in certain so lake association ponds that don't allow it. And they don't allow it for other reasons. Not so much that it's not safe on the ice. They don't allow it because some people set it up near the shore, or they put the fire right on the shore. And if it's dry, if you have dry conditions, this can cause issues. Some towns just have ordinances against it, and they're smaller ponds. However, if it's a great pond in Massachusetts, which is just a water body created by nature over tens of thousands of years, you generally can have a fire on the ice. It's not going to weaken the ice. The thermodynamics of heat is such that the heat will rise. You'll get a little puddling of water, but generally it's a very good practice and a wonderful thing to cook your food over, gather up if it's cold. As an ethical thing, I would recommend taking the branches and all what's left of the charred wood out with you, even though environmentally this is probably only adding good stuff to the water body, right, Jacqueline? It's not really going to damage the water body to put charcoal in it. But just it's along the lines of leave no trace. So take out what you took in. What I generally do, here's a little hack for the fire lovers out there. I take a metal trash can, a small metal trash can with a metal lid. I put all my fire building materials in it. So some nice hardwood, some tinder, all your starting materials, maybe some birch bark with that metal lid, and I'll get out onto the water body, set my tip ups, and then build a fire on the metal lid. metal lid. Don't do it with a plastic lid. And then you have a fire you can move around. If you do get a little slush on the bottom from the warmth, you just slide it around. And then when you're done, everything goes back into the metal trash can and goes into my sled on the way back out. So you may see this Saturday if you come out. No promises, but maybe it's probably going to be, I think it's 40 to 50 degrees, so we may not need a warming fire, but I love a fire on the ice. So practical, safe thing to do. Gear to consider. So once you get into ice fishing, we already talked about the augers and the expensive augers. If you know this is a pastime you like, I'd recommend them. It makes the day easier and more efficient and less work. I recommend fish finders because fish finders put you in the game quicker. They get you where the fish are, but they're expensive. The cheapest one's $100, $150, and it goes on up, way on up from there. They have video ones now. So you put the transducer down with a camera into the water column, and literally you can see the fish swimming around. It's like a video game. So it puts you right where the fish are. If you're not seeing anything, you drill more holes and you find the fish. Fish generally school up and group up in the winter and sometimes don't move much at all. So finding them is half the battle. And we'll talk a little more about that after without a fish finder, which you need to do. So fish finders can be really helpful. They're finders, not catchers, though. A lot of times in the winter, the fish aren't obliging. They're not all that hungry. They kind of waiting for warmer times. So you'll be able to fish where the fish are, but not always catching the fish as a warning. And an ice shelter. These things are awesome. These things extend the day, make it a lot more comfortable. They're not super expensive. They're probably roughly starting at about $100 and up. So if your budget is limited, don't worry about it. Go out on the nicer days. But if you have a little bit deeper pockets, want to extend the days, the colder days, these are wonderful. These little shanties, you can sit in them, watch your tip ups, have a little heater. Even I wouldn't recommend cooking in them, but a little propane heater. You can fish inside them, and it just bigger ones you can actually cook in. We had a gentleman come out onto Indian Lake last year with his, and it was ginormous. Probably was like $300, but you could cook in that one and really be 4 or 5 people could sit in it and be very comfortable. So again, like any pastime, the sky's the limit. This happens to be a real small one or two person shelter. Essential baits you need to have if you're ice fishing, unless you're just strictly using lures, which you can do. The baits are no different than the baits you'd use during warmer times. That's why you see all this nice green. These pictures were taken in the spring and summer. So you have golden shiners, which is your typical pond shiners. And these are the 2 ways to hook them onto your hook. I like the under the dorsal fin above the spine method better. I do not like doing it this way. Fish breathe by opening and closing their mouth through their gills, and this cripples the fish. If that's your intent to catch fish, that's one way, but I really like to do it so they can fish, they can swim around freely this way. Any type of grub bait is really good. So these are darkling beetle larvae called mealworms, but there's also moth larvae and fly larvae, diptera larvae that are really good. They're mousy grubs. They come in little containers. You can buy them in bait and tackle shops. And then there's regular earthworms and night crawlers. These work really good too. I just recommend breaking them into small pieces and not using a giant night crawler because you'll get short strikes. The fish will come up and just hit the night crawler and not get your hook. So same baits as you do during open water times. So now we'll get into the tip up and jig stick techniques, the ways to fish through the ice in the winter. Start with the tip ups. I have to say these are probably the most popular ways to fish through the ice. And the tip up is just, there's many variations, and really you'll see the variations in the trip mechanisms and in how many pieces of wood or plastic goes into these. We like the inexpensive wooden varieties. You'll see these if you come out. 3 bars of wood, a spool to hold your ice fishing line and your leader material, a trip mechanism here along one of the pieces of wood, and a spring steel flag. Very basic. These can be had from, I'd say, $12 to $15 and up. I've seen them $100, $150. The really heavy duty ones with stronger mechanisms. You don't need those if you're only going to ice fish a handful of times. So they're very basic, very easy to use, and this is how you set one up.
My name is Jim Legacy. I work for Mass Wildlife and coordinate the angler education program. And today we're going to set a tip up. Very basic operation here. There's just a couple critical steps you need to know to put the bait in the right location and to make sure you can actually catch fish. So the first thing we do, here's your standard tip up right here. There's nothing much to it. Three bars. of wood, a little spool, a trip mechanism, and a little spring steel as a flag. So we're going to open that up to start with, and then secure the set screws down so it's formed into a cross, and then take the flag out just like that. And the first thing we do, and the most critical thing in the entire procedure, is we have to sound the hole. And sounding the hole is just figuring out the depth at each individual hole when you're ice fishing. So nothing to it. Use what we call a sounder, surprisingly. And we're just going to put that on your hook and drop that down in the water column slowly. So there's all different kinds of sounders. Some of them have little springs on them. This one just has a little clip. You clip right onto the hook like that. And we're just going to drop it right down into the water column. Just like that. And we're just going to let it slowly cascade down so it won't fall off that hook. We're in fairly deep water here. I think we're just about on the bottom now. Okay, so now we're on the bottom. And we know that because we can feel that sounder, that little 2-ounce sounder, just literally thudding on the bottom. So then we're going to put our depth. You can use an ice bobber or just a button you can put on it in the old craft store. You can grab these buttons and slide them on your ice fishing line. And you're just going to slide that down to the top of the water column like that. So you've got a straight line down to your sounder. And you're going to pick it up and slide that button 2 feet-ish toward the sounder or toward the bottom. And what that's going to do, that simple operation, is just going to keep your bait off the bottom and not hiding on the bottom in the weeds and in the rocks. And then after that, you're just going to bring the entire setup right back up onto your spool. And the average tip up is probably, $12 to $15, that kind of thing. And there's really elaborate ones you can buy, but these are the really cheap ones. And then you're just going to take the sounder off away from the hole, so you don't drop it down the hole. And then we need a shiner. Shiners, you can get them at bait and tackle shops, and these are golden shiners, typical New England pond shiners. And what I like to do with the shiner is put it on the hook under the dorsal fin above the spine. So kind of like where the dark skin meets the lighter skin. And it's wiggling around really good. The other way you can do it is by right under the lips, through the lips, I should say, but I don't like the way they swim, and they breathe by opening and closing their mouth with their gills. So it kind of cripples them a little bit, and they may die quicker. And you also have a little split shot weight, which gets that light shiner down into the water column. So then you just put it right back down in the water column, slowly. It's going to probably drop slow anyway, unless that split shot's a little heavier. But I like to use just a little light one, so that shiner swims more or less naturally. You're just going to let that go until the button is right on top of the spool. And we're probably fishing in at least a good 20 feet of water here, so it's going to take a little time. And this operation changes with each hole. I mean, you could be in 5 feet of water or 50 feet of water. That's why finding the bottom is critical, and setting your depth button is critical. And there we go. It's right on the top now. Now you just have to set the flag. And that's your trigger mechanism right there. You're just going to bring the flag down and put it on the open side of that trigger mechanism, just like that. So you want to put it on the open side, so if the fish bite, it triggers that flag to go off. So we'll do that. And then there's considerations for the wind. You can get them at bait and tackle shops, and these are golden shiners, typical New England pond shiners. And what I like to do with the shiner is put it on the hook under the dorsal fin above the spine. So kind of like where the dark skin meets the lighter skin. And it's wiggling around really good. The other way you can do it is by right under the lips, through the lips, I should say, but I don't like the way they swim, and they breathe by opening and closing their mouth with their gills. So it kind of cripples them a little bit, and they may die quicker. And you also have a little split shot weight, which gets that light shiner down into the water column. So then you just put it right back down in the water column, slowly. It's going to probably drop slow anyway, unless that split shot's a little heavier. But I like to use just a little light one, so that shiner swims more or less naturally. You're just going to let that go until the button is right on top of the spool. And we're probably fishing in at least a good 20 feet of water here, so it's going to take a little time. And this operation changes with each hole. I mean, you could be in 5 feet of water or 50 feet of water. That's why finding the bottom is critical, and setting your depth button is critical. And there we go. It's right on the top now. Now you just have to set the flag, and that's your trigger mechanism right there. You're just going to bring the flag down and put it on the open side of that trigger mechanism, just like that. So you want to put it on the open side, so if the fish bite, it triggers that flag to go off. So we'll do that. And then there's considerations for the wind. So the wind today is kind of blowing out of the north, northwest, more of a north right now. So you want to set it so that the wind doesn't knock it off the trigger. If you were to set it like that, the wind might blow it right off. So we want to kind of face it toward the wind. Drop it down in the water column slowly, making sure the button is visible, and you've just set a tip up.
All right, so I apologize again, technology being what it is tonight. Let's just quickly review that. When you're using a tip up, when you generally buy one, you're not going to have the line on it. You're going to have to seek out YouTube and put that nice braided ice fishing line on. You'll just put, 100, 150 feet of it on. You don't have to fill the whole spool up. Some of them, if you get them at a tag sale, flea market, that kind of thing, are going to be all set up for you. Might be a little old. You want to update it, but ice fishing line will last tens of, I don't know, I've had them on for some of mine for 20 years, and the braided line's still wonderful. So just know that when you buy them in the store, they're not going to have line on that spool. So you have to put braided line on, and then just a little 2 or 3 foot monofilament leader and or a fluorocarbon leader, and then your hook and your button. The button slides on the ice line, the braided line before you put your leader on. So simple. YouTube's your friend here. There's so many videos showing you how to set a tip up and or load one up before you go out. So just know that. So drill and skim away your hole. Open up the tip up. Sound that hole. And why are we fishing off the bottom, folks? I know you're probably scratching your head. Well, water is its heaviest at 39 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius. So that heavy water, which is actually warmer than the surface water, is going to drop to the bottom. And all the species you're going after, whether it's trout, bass, pickerel, pike, are going to like that warmer water. They actually are more acclimated, and they thrive better when the water's a lot warmer than that. So they're going to seek out the warmest water in the lake or pond, and it's going to be closer to the bottom. Early and midwinter, late in winter, especially in smaller ponds, you're going to have less oxygen levels in the bottom. So the fish are going to come up a little out of their comfort zone. They're going to look for those stream inlets and outlets that give them more oxygen and food sources. So start off the bottom, couple 3 feet off the bottom, and then go from there. If you're not catching, you can bring it up. If you don't have sounders, or you forget your sounders, or you lose your sounders, just fish the water column. Don't belabor it. You can fish just under the surface. Some trout like to come up high. You can fish worms just under the surface. This is just a way to get in the game quicker. So once you've sounded the hole and you have your bobber set, your button set, you can use an ice bobber too. You'll want to just pull the whole thing right back up. You can see right here where it's buried in the line. It's because as soon as you put your bait on and drop it down, you'll want this sitting loosely right on top of the spool. You know you're fishing in that right depth, right above the bottom, and that shiner's swimming around fishing for you right where it's supposed to be, not hidden in the rocks and weeds on the bottom. So simple setup, nothing to it. And then there's considerations. You definitely don't want to put your flag. That's why we showed it to you twice. You want to put it on the open side of this trip mechanism. A lot of people make the mistake of putting it on the inside of the trip mechanism. The spool gets turned. This trips to the right, and then your mechanism, your flag, is over to the left, and it's not going to trigger. So you have fish on, you don't even know it. So there's different types though. So just know those before you go out. So this is what happens when a flag goes off. All right. So the best part of ice fishing is when this happens. The flag goes up, you come running over. Newbies, people that have never ice fished before, love this because the flag is up indicating possibly there's a fish on. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up to the hole. You're not going to be too eager. You're going to slide up, skate up. However you want to get to the hole, you're going to come in and see if the spool is turning. And indeed, the spool is turning on this one. That's your second indication that you have a fish on. This is your first when this goes up, and if the spool is turning, there's a fish taking your line out. So you want to be very careful. They're some fish are very touchy about how they what they feel on the other end of the line. So you want to pull this up slowly, lay it down on the ice. Now your indicator button's also gone. Another great sign that you have a fish at least there biting. So then you want to pick up the line with your hand like this, and you want to physically feel if there's a fish on.
and I'm pulling it in like this, I can feel a little tugging back. Then you want to just give a little tug up. We're using circle hooks, so they pretty much set themselves. So then you just want to hand over hand fight the fish back in, and you want to kind of put the line up on the side like this, so it isn't all like balled up right here, right at the hole, making a big mess. And if you have a buddy, they can actually be taking that in while you're fighting the fish. Then you just bring the fish right up through the hole like that. In this case, it's a nice chain pickerel. One of your classics in the winter. You want to grip them really good like this. Like that. And we have a circle hook on this. So usually they're just caught in the upper lower jaw. Really easy. And they have to be 15 inches in mass to keep. This one's right in that ballpark, but we're going to set this young fish free today. And the best way to do this is to put it right down the hole head first. Don't put it tail first. It struggles. You just put it right down the hole head first and free it up. And you've just caught a fish through the ice.
That's all there is to it, folks. And I'll point out a couple things right here. I talked about those spikes. These are the best ones. They're around your neck. You don't even know they're there until you need them. $5, easy peasy, great to have. 3 things when you're coming up to the flag: don't rush. No need to rush at all. You want the fish to feel comfortable. Take your bait out. It's hard not to contain enthusiasm, especially if it's young folks. They're definitely going to want to run up or skate up or slide up quickly, but just you have some patience. Check and see if that spool is turning. If the spool's turning, that's your second indication. And then if your button's gone, that's your third. Then definitely is a fish taking your bait out. And then, like I said, I can't stress this enough either. Be careful when you pull the tip up out and handle the line. You don't want to just grab it, because the fish feels that on the other end, and a lot of times will do its best to shake the bait out of its mouth. So just be wary of that. All right, so that's the main way people fish through the ice. They use tip ups or ice traps. There's another way to do it, and I do both, and it's fun to do both. Like this.
Jim, I had one question on that.
Excellent.
So it was if we need to put our name and info on the tip ups, if that's something that's required.
I recommend it, Jacqueline. It's not required. It's not by law. Some states it is required, and this is so the environmental police they have all that information. If you're not tending your traps, they go out there and they see your name on them, then they know, okay, who we're looking for. But no, it's not required. It maybe at one time was, because we get a lot of tip-ups donated to us with a full name and address. I think years ago was name and address on the tip-up. It isn't anymore. But if you're fishing in a group, and all of ours are branded Mass Wildlife, we put MWs and Mass Wildlife on all the spools and on the flags. Because if you're fishing in a group with 5, 6, 7 other people, it's good to know which ones are yours, because they're all going to look the same at the end of the day. And basically, the best way to do is just to put your initials on the flag, or just write it on the spool. So no, not legally, you don't have to do it, but it's a good idea to do. So great question. So jigging is like this young lady's doing right here is another great way. And you see the little mini rod. This is actually a freshwater, open water fishing rod. Set up for young folks, but you can also use them. We have some of these for ice fishing, so they're good multitasking rod. They can use it during open water times and during ice season. So you'll see it's just a smaller, like a 2-foot rod, allows you to get right up over the hole. But you can use your regular 5 or 6 footer if you want. It's just generally not as sensitive, and you're going to be further back from the hole. So don't spend the world on these. Jigging is a wonderful way. It's the same thing. You're going to start at the bottom. You're going to drop your lure. Generally, I like to use a lure. There's so many different kinds to use. Haley jigs are all the rage right now, but I like Swedish pimples, Castmasters, Al's goldfish, ice flies, with bead-headed weighted flies that you would normally use for fly fishing. You can put them on the end of your jig stick as well. And I like to tip them with a little bit of a grub, a mealworm, or a little mousy grub, and drop it right to the bottom. Turn the handle a little bit so it's a couple feet off the bottom, and then we call it jigging because the motion, the up and down motion, when you do that, it makes the lure bounce up and down in the water and hopefully attract the fish. So very simple technique, can be super effective with lures, live bait, or both. Again, you just lower it right to the bottom and use an erratic motion. Sometimes the fish don't like any motion. If you just put the bait in front of their nose and let it sit there, they'll let you know. What you're going to see then generally is the tip of the rod just barely move. And if it's a big fish, sometimes you'll really feel the pull. And that's probably the most entertaining way to ice fish. If you get good at that, you can skip the tip-ups. You can just take your jig stick, your auger, your hand auger, and a backpack with your food and refreshments in it, and a handful of lures and bait, and just go minimalist ice fishing. Have at it for a couple hours. You don't have to take the entire setup with the tip up and the sleds and the heavy auger and all that. So there's neat things about the minimalist variety too. But once you get good at it, once you get to a hole where there's fish and you can sense that there's fish there, you can catch 20 or 30 or 40 fish at one hole. It's finding the fish and getting a sense of when they bite, because it's very subtle in the winter. They just barely nibble. You'll see the line move. You can put ice kind of indicators on the end of your rods. It's a little spring you attach to the end of the rod, and you run the line through it, and it's very sensitive, and you'll just watch it. If that's just barely moving, that's a fish biting. And then you know to just give a lift motion, lift the rod up, and a lot of times the fish is right there with the bait in its mouth. I wouldn't belabor any one individual hole. I would spend no more than 5-6 minutes. And if you're not getting anything, move on to the next hole. What I generally do is I'll set my 4 tip ups, then I'll drill another 10 or 12 holes, and I'll work those holes until I find the fish with my jig stick. So I use it kind of in a combination, but some days when I just want to go out a couple hours, I'll take the jig stick and the hand auger. When you do feel a bite, like I say, just that quick upward motion, just like you do during open water season. Set the hook and just fight them all the way up by reeling it up. So really cool, easy way to ice fish. A few tips.
What's that spring called again?
What's that?
The spring? What is the spring called?
Oh, the thing on the end?
Yeah.
It can be called a spring bobber, because it's attached, even though it's not in the water, it's attached to the end of the rod, and you run the line through it and then put your hook, your lure on, your bait, and that it just gives a little more sensitivity to the tip of the rod. They're generally just called spring bobbers for ice fishing. But they come in a variety of names and a variety of styles. But basically, it's just an extension you attach to the end of the rod that gives a little more sensitivity, so you can detect bites a little more, Jacqueline. So a few further tips for success. The most important one is your Mass Wildlife website. You're going to just Google Mass Wildlife. The first one's going to come up. You're going to hit the big fishing tab on the front. You're going to get into the fishing section, scroll down to the Go Fish Mass map. And this is your friend, because if you don't know where to fish, say you live in the North Shore, down on the Cape, or out in the Berkshires, you pop this up and you'll see all kinds of lakes and ponds and rivers around there. And there's write-ups about what's in them. There's modern bathymetry. This is bathymetry, which is just depth, low depth marks, or kind of reverse of what you see on a topographic map. It goes down into the water column. It shows depth at area throughout the lake or pond. So this is kind of important if you're fishing for certain species like shallow weedy water, certain species like the drop-offs. Like you'll find a point like this with a drop-off. So if you use this on your Smarty Pants phone, on your smartphone, and you open it up and you walk out, with your GPS will literally show you where you are on the water body. So this is our Go Fish Mass. They call it Go Fish Mass app or map. But you can load it right up on your phone and find where you are on that water body, whether you're fishing in the summer, whether you're fishing in the winter. It's just a really neat tool to have. But beyond that, this whole Go Fish Mass thing is really awesome. We're always upgrading it. We're always adding to our maps and updating the pond file. So it shows you what's in them, what's stocked, how to get there, directions, where the launch site and the access sites are on these water bodies. So most states are going to have this resource. So if you're planning a trip to Maine or New York for the weekend to ice fish, make sure you go to their state fish and wildlife site and check out all their tools for success. So a few veteran tips, folks. Know where your fish live. In the winter, we talked about this paradox where the water's warmest on the bottom. Start there and you'll work your way up through the water column. As you get further into the winter, late February, early March, and smaller ponds, the process of decomposition limits the oxygen down low, so you'll have less oxygen on the bottom, and you'll have to come up higher in the water column to find the fish and find inlets, stream inlets, and outlets. Be careful though, because again, that's moving water coming into the pond. You'll want to be cognizant that there's at least 6 or 7 inches in those areas, but there's a lot of times you can find fish right there because there's more oxygen and there's more bait coming in and out of the water body. So know those locations. It is the same old fish. the same species you'll catch in the open water times you'll catch through the winter. So pickerel, pike, sunfish, perch, bass, trout, all the same fish in those water bodies. They do get a little logier in the winter. They're just kind of existing till the times when they reproduce and eat more and thrive and grow. But they will still bite. You'll still find them in the water body, and you'll still pull the same species you'll pull out during the summer. Don't drill your holes too close. I know this is appealing, so you don't have to walk too far, but I've seen people drill their holes 5, 6, 7 feet apart, and then when a fish takes it, they'll go right through your other tip-up line and tangle your lines all up under the surface. So you'll want to keep them 30, 40 feet apart, because if you get a big fish, sometimes they'll swim really fast. They'll just swim in a direction, and they might be going right at one of your other tip-ups. Think small in terms of your bait, folks. It sounds appealing to catch bigger fish, and bigger fish do focus on bigger baits, but you'll be waiting a long time for that flag to go off if you're using 7, 8, 9, 10 fish, 10-inch fall fish or big golden shiners. If you're a trophy hunter and you've graduated beyond catching the smaller fish, fine. We have a lot of people like to do that. But if you're just starting out, use small baits. Small shiners, small to medium shiners will catch all the fish. We'll catch small fish, medium fish, big fish. Keep your bait handy. You're going to be getting flags. You're going to be putting new bait on. You don't want to be chasing the bait all around. So always keep your bait at your side when you're moving around and checking your tip-ups. And then move. Don't be a lazy angler. I can be lazy if I have a tired day on the water, not getting any tip-ups, and I'm perfectly happy with that if I'm just out there to experience the day. But if you actually want to catch fish, if you're not getting anything on your 5 tip-ups, start drilling more holes and moving your tip-ups around. Sometimes it's easier to find the fish than have them find you. Remember, they kind of school up and stay together in areas in the pond, and sometimes they don't move much at all. So once you find them, say one flag goes off of your 5, start moving your other tip-ups closer to that one flag. Some days it's easy. As soon as you start setting them, the flags go up, and it's a great day, and it's hard to even get your 5 tip-ups in the water. But other days it's slow, and it's better just to keep moving till you find the fish. And that's where, you're drilling more holes and you're exercising more. It's part of the day.
Jim, what if you go out onto the ice? We had a question from someone, and you find someone else's hole that they've drilled. Is it safe to use that hole?
Absolutely. That's a good cheater, and it's also maybe an indicator that a veteran angler found fish, and that's a good place to start fishing. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I would say if someone's right there and has drilled their holes out, it's not ethical to kind of sidle up next to them and use their holes. But if there's no one there and they're yesterday's holes or earlier in the day's holes, absolutely. Then you don't have to drill holes, and it's easier. So yeah, very, very good thing to do. So that's the presentation, folks. I'm sorry about the glitch in the middle of it. Technology, what it is. We overcame it though, and we showed you this. Again, Jacqueline is going to have this available to watch again, and we have a different version, but a very similar version on our website too. So you can watch it as many times as you need to be confident. We also have other resources on our website too. And we're always adding to those resources with tips and techniques. So thank you all. I'll stick around for any questions, comments, concerns about tonight, about potentially fishing Saturday. And I hope that some of you do join us Saturday. It's looking like a nice day. If we get safe ice, we should hopefully be able to put some of this into action.
Absolutely. So we have a few questions. One is braided line recommended for the jigging reels also, or just for tip-ups?
Awesome question. No. With the jigging rod, you can just use regular monofilament. You can use braid. A lot of people are starting to use braid now because braid doesn't have the stretch or the memory, so you feel the bites better. So if you want to be that much more in tuned to the fish and feel the bites better, you can use braid. But braid's a lot more expensive. Nothing beats monofilament for ease of use, and it's very inexpensive. So you don't need the braid on your jigging line, on your jigging setup.
What is the minimum distance you would recommend to space out holes?
I'd say 30 feet, good 30 feet. Okay. Some fish, it's so funny. Some fish will just grab the bait and sit there. You'll go up to the hole, the spool won't even be turning, your button will still be there, but you'll have a fish on. It's just mouthing it. there's some cool YouTubes, Jacqueline, that show what goes on under the ice in the winter, and I'd recommend people watch them. The fish, picture the fish are just kind of existing, waiting for warmer times, and there's bait right on their nose, and they're just kind of smelling it and then just kind of swimming away. They're not that interested. But there are days when they're very interested, and there are fish that take that bait and just they'll swim 50 feet with it, and your flag will be popping, your spool will be zipping. So it just kind of depends, but I'd say a good 30 feet anyways, so you avoid those tangles between your tip-ups.
Let's see. Should we bring our own rods on Saturday?
Absolutely not. If you have a jig stick you want or a freshwater rod, fine, but we have 75 or 80 tip-ups and probably 20 or 30 jig sticks, so you don't need to bring anything. I had a question about that from my group last night, and their sons were going to go out, and their sons made a list for their mother to what to bring for Saturday, and she was all like, what am I going to do? And I said, just come. You'll see what we use, and then go purchase the equipment after. That's the more sensible thing to do.
Oh, here's an interesting one, because I know that weather affects fishing during non-ice time. How about during time when there's ice on the water?
Absolutely. Atmospheric pressure always affects fish, changes in it. When we feel good, those nice high pressure days, we feel energized, especially like those crisp fall days. The fish like those overcast, low pressure days more. Not always. It's not a tried and true rule, but generally those days, the overcast days, precipitation laden days, are generally a little fishier. I can tell you this, early is better. The first light on water, I know a lot of people don't want to hear it. And in the winter, it's bad enough to get out when it's down to zero, but so getting out at first light, you're always going to get more. You're going to get more flags. Fish can sense the daylight, even if it's a thick ice and snow covered pond, and they are more active. Most of the fish that we're going after are daytime diurnal species, so they're going to be more active in the day. So first light is really good. I've always found that first light, and then you get kind of a lull and then a bump sometimes during midday, and then in the evening before dark can be good. But yeah, so atmospheric pressure can definitely affect fishing all year long.
Excellent. All right. So the top question of the evening is, how do we sign up for Saturday? And so the answer to that is that everyone who attended to this meeting with the email address that you attended with, you will receive a link to 2 sessions. There's going to be a session at 10 o'clock and a session at 11:30. You will be able to sign up on Eventbrite for those sessions. And because space is limited because of our instructors and space at the facility, please make sure that you sign up every person that is going to be attending. So if you're bringing 3 people, make sure that you sign up those 3 people. We might have more spaces than we thought we had, because it seems like we had reserved some of the spaces for the Saturday event for the folks that took a class with Jim last night, but there weren't too many people that signed up yet, so we have a little bit of extra space.
Let's fill it up.
Hopefully we could accommodate everyone in this group who wants to go. But I'll be sending out that email either later tonight or tomorrow morning. So just keep an eye on those inboxes.
And I would just add that it's going to be more, as much a demo as it is. We'll have everything out so people can see and try it, and we'll have a lot in the water. So it'll be kind of a hang around demo. We'll have some nice hot refreshments for folks, and it's just a kind of a cool thing to come out and see how it's done.
Yeah, it's a great time. I had never ice fished before this event last year, and I had a lot of fun. So yeah, well, thanks so much, Jim. I just wanted to share with you all just 1 or 2 more things. If you enjoyed this event, we have a bunch of other events that we've recorded over the last year, that angler event series that I had mentioned. If you go to wooanglerseries.com, you can see videos of those events over the past year. We have things like you know, how invasive aquatic plants are affecting our fish populations, our cold water fisheries in the area, our wild trout fisheries, where those are, and what the significance is. So a lot of cool stuff on woanglerseries.com. This recording will also be there. We're also going to be sharing a presentation next week. In 2 weeks, called State of the Lakes and How Our Blue Spaces Can Make Worcester a More Sustainable Community, in which we talk about water quality data in the lakes and ponds in Worcester, so you could learn more about the exciting projects we have there to improve water quality and therefore our fisheries. So if you're interested in that, you could go and sign up using this QR code or tinyurl.com/blueinthewoo 2021. So with that, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. The Watershed Associations, Indian Lake and Tatnick Brook. Thank you so much, Jim. As always, it's a huge pleasure to have you. And we're so excited to go out and learn more from you on Saturday. And just keep an eye on those inboxes, and you guys will all receive those links to sign up for those events. They're specially for you, which is why we waited until after this event to hand them out. So thanks so much, and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.